Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm gonna show you guys the making of this shirt and the trials and tribulations along the way. I used the same pattern that I used for the mock-up, which I made a whole video about. So if you're curious how I got to the point of making a pattern that was essentially this, I have a design video you can see, and then the mock-up video for the shirt, which is this one right here. The real shirt is here. So please enjoy! Alright, I have finished cutting out all of the pieces, and I think it worked fine. I made sure to cut the wristband large enough to have the lace on it when it was folded in half, and I did the same thing with the collar, wherever that ended up. I've made a few alterations to the pattern even beyond some of the obvious things, like where I made the yoke larger in order to have it be kind of more of a match for the design of the actual shirt. I also... This is the bib. It says cut 2 on fold. I only cut 1 on fold, and it works out fine that way, and it saves a little bit of fabric. The pattern is not necessarily a conservative fabric pattern. It definitely uses the full 3 yards that it talks about in the pattern, which is pretty excessive already. So I figured if I can cut down fabric where I can, it's for the best. So, time to start sewing. Alright, I have the first of the yokes pinned in, and the gathers gathered. And now I'm just about to pin in the other side of the yoke here, and sew it all together, and then we'll have the step 1 complete. So I'm really liking this fabric. I think this is going to be a really good fabric choice. It's soft and pretty lightweight, so I'm looking forward to working with it. Alright, I am all pinned in on both sides here. I had to do a little bit of surgery on this one. My pattern drafting skills are not super up to par. I wanted the yoke to be significantly larger than in the pattern, so I essentially doubled it, but I also kind of made it a V, and I had to do a little surgery on the back of the shirt to make that come across. Hopefully it will show up really well when I sew it, and I'll show you shortly. Alright, that is all sewed in. I don't love the kind of bubbling here, but it needs to get eventually cut down the center back anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. And more or less my lines are vertical. So, there we go. Moving on. Alright, I'm gonna start working on the front bib, which is like the main decorative element of this, so it's something I really want to take my time with and make sure I'm doing well enough that I'll be really happy wearing it. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm human and still learning, but good enough that I'm happy with it. The pattern actually calls for 2 of these to be cut out, sewn in, and then the back of it actually removed from the shirt front. So I didn't do that. I did it in the mock-up, and I decided that was very silly, so I'm not going to do it here. I'm also not going to do the other thing it calls for, which is to have you cut it and then re-sew it down for a placard over here. I'm not really that invested in having a faux placard. It looked fine, but it also made it that much more complicated in terms of it being symmetrical. So I'm just gonna bypass that and not do it. The pleats will make it smaller to the extent that I wanted anyway, and so I'm just going to ignore that. I'm just going to use lace instead, and I'll just put buttons, faux buttons on front. So I'm just gonna kind of work here and we'll see what happens. The reason that I'm keeping these away from the edge here, the edge of the fabric, is that the edge will actually be sewed down flat, right sides to right sides, and then bound. So I need to make sure I leave enough of a raw edge that it can be bound without impacting the design of the lace. So I think I'll just essentially put it all the way over here. See if I can get it as straight as possible. Working on the pleats now. So I've just ticked off some lines here. I am working on pleating, and now I'm going to try to get these straight because I don't think I managed it. So I'm just going to be fiddling around for a little bit here. So this is the current status of the bib. I have the pleats ironed down. They look pretty good. Now, I have to check whether I'm supposed to sew it in right away. I might just stitch around to get the pleats stuck in. Alright, I've had to make some design updates. So I screwed up when I cut this out. I didn't cut the top part of the pattern out. My pattern piece was folded, and so I just screwed up. And so I had to cut out a separate piece and then sew it in. So there's like this really awkward like seam line, right? Like on the top of the shirt. So I don't love that. So I thought, well, maybe I can just essentially pretend it was intentional and put some lace in. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna like fill this whole area with lace. I think I have enough. I cut out what I need for the collar and for the cuffs, or kind of what I'll do exactly. I'm going to play that by ear. I'm going to sew that in last anyway, so it's okay if I take my time deciding. Alright, and this gives you a really rough idea of kind of the design and how it's going to come together. So, yep, we've got our lace down the middle, which I think I'm still going to attach buttons to, but time will tell. And then I've got our decorative lace here and here. And yeah, I think it might look best if I fill this in. but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all comes together. Alright, so I have the bib sewed in, so now I'm just going to go around and attach the bias tape. And get this bib all finished up. I think I have a little helper here though. See if she helps as much as she thinks she will. Oh, you don't need to knock that over. Okay, back to work. I got my, it's not really a bias strip because it's not cut on the bias, but my binding strip in, and I am now gonna hand sew it shut so it is as small a footprint as possible. This is where the shirt currently stands. These are just pinned in to kind of show the design here. But I'm just so torn on these. I'm not loving how they look. I didn't trim down a lot of fabric when I did the binding edge, and I'm so torn. I don't love it. It is like fine. Certain parts of it are a lot better than others. It's not fully straight, which is really frustrating because I tried so hard and got so far. And this edge really does sort of bulb out, and I don't love it. I'm not sure if I'm going to be fussy about it or just sort of let it go. Okay, I've done some things. I have eased in, just with pins right now, the shirt collar. In the actual pattern, it's just a collar stand, and then you're supposed to have a detachable collar that goes over it. But I'm going to have it be an actual collar, essentially, and with this lace applied to the top of it all around. And again, I've been changing so much about this pattern, it's kind of funny. It's how I treat, like, all of the things I do. Cooking, it's just an inspiration recipe, don't worry about it. But in the pattern itself, it has like a fake tab closing with a button in the front, and I've basically added an overlap at the back, and I'll have it closed officially in the back, but I didn't want to do it the same way the pattern did because I don't want to. Basically, in the actual pattern, you have the flaps in the front, and they create a faux overlap and buttonhole, and then you just cut down the back. But I just didn't want that. I didn't want the overlap up here. I wanted a clean line of lace, so I did it my way. And in the back, I cut through, and I'll be putting buttons here. I called for a rolled hem, but I just wasn't feeling confident, so I just did a standard hem. I think it'll be fine. So yeah, now I will attach the collar, and then I'll do the sleeves, and I think last I'll put the rest of the lace on. I think I want to do that and make some design changes, but only when I see it all come together. Alright, I have it inside out, and I'm getting ready to do up my side seams. And this is essentially a rough fitting process for me. I am still pretty convinced that I made a very big shirt, despite already having taken it in massively from the pattern. So I'm going to start with a really, I'm still using machine stitching. I'm not going to like baste it properly, but I'm going to start with essentially a basting stitch on my machine, and start with 1 inch seam allowance on each side and just see how it looks. The pattern actually wants me to set the arms first and then sew down the sides, but I want to make sure this fits, so I'm going to do it that way. Alright, so this is the shirt with the 1 inch side seam. And I think that's fine. It's comfortable. It's plenty roomy. I have it pinned in place. I haven't put buttons on yet. And now I'm just working out where to put the shoulders. Originally, I was thinking I would have them be kind of slouchy, but I think I want them to be a little bit more classy looking, so I'm going to raise them up a little bit. And so I've marked that off where I think I'm going to put that in. Overall, I'm happy with the way it's coming together. It's going to look a lot better tucked into something. Ignore my pajama pants. Tucked into like a pair of trousers. At the moment, it's just very weird and like half dressy. But I think it'll come together better. And I'm deciding I'm kind of okay with the status of the binding edge. It's not awesome, but I think it's good enough. Alright, I haven't been filming very much of this because it's kind of a two-hands job, and I couldn't get the... Hello, kitty. Couldn't get the stand set up for it to film itself. But I am setting the sleeve, and it is a process, as you can tell by my multiple different lines here. I'm using that pen that all of the internet is raving about. It disappears with an iron, so it is a temporary line. So the green line is my current plan, and I think I've got it set to where I want it to be. Now I just have to match the other side and get it sewed in. So, yeah, I ended up having to go in quite a bit in order to make it fit where my shoulders end instead of where the generic person's shoulders end. So, it's not like an incredibly fitted look, but I still want it to sort of be made for me. I am hand sewing in all of this lace, and I just realized something. I was sewing this in last because I was like, oh, it's okay, the edge will be covered up by the binding edge here, so it's fine that I haven't sewed it in. And then I realized I already put in the sleeves. So I think I'm just gonna sew these down by hand on the sides. And then I think I'm going to open the sleeve back up, hopefully just this one section, and capture the edge in the sleeve shoulder. Oh, I'm so frustrated with myself. Oh well. Everything else has been going really good. I've got the collar all in here, and I did the cuffs in as well. And I'm going to put in buttonholes here. Hopefully, I will keep hand sewing in the meantime. So the shirt is more or less complete. I need to do some inside seam management. I need to fill some stuff down. And then I need to attach buttons and then also buttonholes where I am going to do cufflinks. I'm really pleased with how it's coming together. I really like some of how this worked. I like that this... I kind of like the way this looks, even though it's a little bit more bunched up on me. My shoulders aren't quite so broad. Even though this was just to cover a seam, essentially, this was just to hide a mistake. I kind of like it. It gives it kind of a geometric look, which is something I've seen in some pieces. I don't love the kind of way this sits here, the way it bubbles out, but when it's on a person, it doesn't look quite as bad, and with everything else going on, I think it's okay. Not ideal, but okay. So this is the back of the shirt, and what I tried to do was I tried to do it like I should have, which is I tried to put in buttonholes and then just have buttons. But my buttonholes turned out like monumentally bad. I actually have a machine that should be able to do buttonholes, but I could not get the attachment to work right. It was just like kind of a nightmare. And so I was like, well, screw it. I'll just do them by hand. But yeah, I did like the world's worst buttonhole job. I can't even tell you, I don't know what I did wrong, but they turned out really just horribly bad. So what I did is I just sewed the button on top of it, and I'm just pretending I never did that. Oh yeah, and I even like, they were so bad. Just like really, the world's ugliest buttonhole. Like just really bad. How did I do that so bad? Kind of bad. So yeah, I've sewed the button on top just to sort of basically pretend. It's a pretend button. And then I was like, that's okay. I have a bunch of hooks and eyes. I'll just use hooks and eyes. So yeah, I tried these, and it turns out that the shirt is loose enough and kind of blousy enough in the back that the hooks and eyes would not actually keep enough tension to stay closed. I'm actually going to put one up here still. I think it will be fine on the collar. There's enough structure to it. But for the yoke part and the lower down back part, it was just a no-go. They would just pop open. So finally, my lovely partner was like, hey, I think I have a couple of snaps left. Do you want them? And she had 4, which is like the very least amount that I needed. So I went with that. So I finally have something that will close the back here. I just used snaps, and I'm just pretending that is a button, basically. and it works fine. It works great. Because I don't trust my ability to do buttonholes, I'm going to do snaps for the like wrist as well. I really wanted to be able to do cufflinks, but I think that needs to wait until I know what I'm doing when it comes to buttonholes. So that'll be another shirt that gets to have cufflinks. We live and we learn. I did it! Ah, I'm so excited. It is complete. Alright, I'm gonna give you guys a quick tour here on Captain Aubrey the dress form. Just so you can see it a little bit better. He is differently shaped than I am. He's got a bit of a broader neck so it doesn't close in the back, but it's still a relatively decent show and tell option. So we've got the lace sewn in here. It's on the collar. It is hiding that unfortunate seam I had to add. I did go back in. This is just folded under because it's being hidden here. I did go back in, open up the arm seam, and then sew it back because I was like, oh, it just won't look right otherwise. So I got that in. The cuffs are all done. It fits really well, and I like the way that the cuffs, I like the cuff length right now. In terms of like how tight it is on my wrist. I think it's really quite nice. And yeah, gosh, I'm just so excited that it's finished. That's the whole shirt. It's a little bit long, but it, is meant to be tucked in. So, but you know what? It kind of looks nice not tucked in too. If you're just going to abandon history anyway. So, I'm very pleased. Alright, so the back. Again, it doesn't fit the dress form, but it does fit me, so that's the important part. As I said before, I basically just nixed the buttons idea. I just had so much trouble. I cheated. I went with snaps. They're pretend buttons. Haha! But the thing that I am most pleased about is the yoke in general. If you saw the video about the mock-up of this, the yoke was only like about this wide. Like it went down to here and then it was just the back of the shirt. And I thought that was baloney. So I widened it up. I think it looks much better. When it's closed up, it looks good. So that's the wrap. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, be queer and make stuff. Oh, no, don't do that.